Greetings dear friends and welcome once more to this channel. I am 𝐏𝐫𝐸 from 𝐓𝐮𝐿 Company. In this tutorial, I'm going to be guiding you on how to solve HND 2022 practical section question 2 under structural programming. Before I get started, if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button below. So let's move to our question. So in this tutorial, we are going to be answering question 2 under structure programming and data structure. So let's move to the question. This is question 2. And the question says that consider the following data. So we have been given a table of 2 columns, roll number and name. So we are asked now, you want to store this information in a file name register.txt. That's we want to store the information in the table above in a file name register.txt. So we are asked to write a program that takes the above information from the keyboard and stores in the file on separate lines. Then they continue. The program should equally read the content of the file and display on the screen. And then we have an NB which says that observe to see the file register.txt and make sure that you open to see the data in it. Then let the content of the file be displayed on the screen. Okay. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. So let's move to our Visual Studio Code. I am going to start by creating a file which I'm going to name file.c. And I'm going to proceed with the structure of C. That is the skeleton of C. Okay. Oh, so you can see some lines of code which are proposed to me. This is because I have activated Copilot here. So, but you should not look at that. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I will need to create a file connection. So before I do that, I think we should get back again and read the question. So remember that we have been given a table of 2 columns and we want to write a program that takes the data in the table from the keyboard. That is, it means the user will be the one entering the data using a keyboard, and the data should be stored in a file on separate lines. Let's move back to Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to start by creating a file connection, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to use a printer, and I'm going to call my printer output. And then I'm going to use 𝐹open. I'm going to call the file register text as the question has asked me, and since we want to store the data in a file, I'm going to use the write. I'm going to use write. So here I have created a file connection using a pointer called output, and then I want to save the data, or I want to write the data in a file called register.txt. So you can see here that I have used W because W stands for write data. So now that I have created my file connection, I need to declare some variable. So for the variable that I will need for this exercise, I will need a variable of type int, which I'm going to call roll num, which stands for roll number, and you can see here that this is an array of size 7. I am equally going to create two variables of type integer, which will be used for my loops. And then finally, I'm going to create a two-dimensional string array. So this two-dimensional array, which I have created, called name of type character of type char, will be made up of 7 rows and 14 columns. So here we are using a two-dimensional string array because we have a set of strings that we will need to store in an array. Now that we have declared all our variables, the next thing that we need to do, we have to enable the user to enter or to input data. So I'm going to use a printf for that. And then to make sure that the user can enter all the whole number in a sequential manner, I'm going to use a for loop for that. And then a scanf. With a formal specification of %d, because I know that I have declared my whole number to be of type integer. So the formal specification for an integer is %d. And then I'm going to use another printf to enable the user to enter the names. Another for loop. Yeah, I forgot to precise the index of the row. So I have just corrected it. So at this point, I am done with enabling the user to enter data. So you can see that here in the first step, I forgot to specify that we want the whole num and need to specify the index, because as the user is entering our data, the data will be assigned a specific index, and therefore a memory location will be created for that data. And it's the same with the names. So now that we are done with enabling the user to enter data, the next thing we need to do, we need to move to the indices of the whole num array. So to do that, I'm going to use printf. And then a for loop again. Another printf. And remember that when we have created a file connection, we always need to close the file connection. Then we can add a return for success. So this is the code that we are supposed to write. So the first printf, here we have to normally specify the pointer, and then we want to get the 2 columns. So this is going to give us the two columns, row numbers and name, as you saw in the table. And then now we are going to use another for loop now to move to the indices and assign the various row number and the names. And then finally we need to close our connection. So let's run this program and test and see if it works as expected. I'm going to start by compiling our program. So to compile this program, I'm going to move to terminal and I'm going to open a new terminal. Here I'm going to move to command prompt. So to compile my program, I'm going to use GCC. So you can see that the program has been compiled and you can see the executable file. So I can run it now. So you can see enter the row num. So I'm going to enter all my row num, which are 21. And then I'm going to enter the names. So this is my register.txt file that has been created. We can open. So you can see that we have gotten back our table. So with this, we have answered the first part of that question. Now in the second part, we need to write another program that will read now this data which is found in this table. So let's get started. We are now done with the first part of the question. Now we are going to move to the second part. Before we get to the second part, it's important that we should get back to the question and read it once more. So for the second part of the question, it says that the program should equally read the content of the file and display on the screen. So that is what we have to do on the second part. Moving back to Visual Studio, I am going to create a file which I will just name file1.c. Okay, I'm going to start with the skeleton of C. So with this, remember that in the first part of the question, we had to write a program that will store the data that will be entered by the user in the file called register.txt, which we have done, and you can see it here. Now we want to write a program that will read the data that is found in register.txt. So that is what question part 2 of the question is talking about. So moving back to my file 1.c, I'm going to start by declaring some variable. So I'm going to declare a string variable. So you can see that we are still making use of the same variables that we created in part 1 of the question. Here you can see that we have created 3 variables for this program: a 2-dimensional string array, name, an integer array, row num, and another variable of type int called I. So now that we have done that, we need to create a file connection. Here you can see that I want to read data in a file or in the file called register.txt. So you can see that here I'm having small r which stands for read. Now we have created a file connection. We will need to declare another variable of type char, which we will call header, which is a character array. So this character array called header is going to help us to read the headers in our file. So now, to read the headers in our file, I'm going to use 𝐏𝐫𝐸, which is a character function. And for its argument, I'm going to have the header, the size of the header. Then I'm going to use a printf to read the data stored in the header variable. At this point, I have used the 𝐹get method to read the header data in my file register.txt. So the header function will help us to read the header of our table. So when he has read the header of our table, we'll have to print it using a printf. Okay. Now that we are done with that, we will now need to read the data. So we are going to use a while loop. With this statement, it helps us to read the data. So you can see that we have used a regular expression. So this expression simply says that we should read a sequence of character, and while reading that sequence of character, we can read any character except the new line character, and the bracket here is to end the sequence. So now that we have done that, we have to close our connection. Now that we have closed our file connection, we need to print the data that was read in the file. To do that, I'm going to use another for loop. So we are done with the code. Let's do some check. So before I compile this program, this line of code, as I was trying to explain earlier, is used to print all the roll numbers and the names that were read from the file. So that is done when we have closed the file connection. That is why you see the line of code is coming after the F close. So let's now compile our program and see if is going to give us the expected output. Seems we are having some little errors. I guess it should be coming from here. Should declare J. So let me get back and compile this program again. Okay. So you can see our output, which is what we expect. So thank you once more for watching this video. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe so you can encourage us to keep on producing videos like this. Thank you.